Welcome back to another Wednesday on the Pagan Perspective. I'm your Wednesday host, Yeka, and this week, I don't think there's ever been a topic that we have covered that I have been as passionate about as this week's. We are talking about how permaculture relates to our practices and how our local environment or biome does as well. So I'm going to jump right in because I could make this video hours and hours long, but I'm going to try and keep it a little bit shorter. So first off, what is permaculture? And that can be a little bit confusing because if one looks it up, there's a lot going on YouTube, and often you'll find people make reference to, say, a permaculture bed, which they usually mean a hugelkultur or an herb spiral or something like that. So there are a lot of techniques which get called permaculture. But what permaculture really is it is a design system. And it is a design system which is guided by 3 ethics. Those ethics are earth care, people care, and future care. And that last one you will see represented in several different ways. Sometimes you'll hear it called fair share or return of surplus, but personally I love the future care interpretation of it. And what permaculture is doing is actually using nature, looking at nature as our model to inform us how to build systems that will meet our needs as humans and the needs of our larger communities. So the larger communities of humans, but also the natural ecosystems that we are a part of. So the community, including our soil and our birds, our arthropods, the whole ecosystem. So permaculture has definitely grown and evolved over the years. The term was originally coined in the 70s and 80s. Of course, the practice of looking at nature and using it to inform our decision-making processes and the systems that we're designing is nothing new. But in this form, it comes from the 80s, and the term permaculture originally meant permanent agriculture. And over time, it has shifted to more often being understood to be permanent culture. Now, personally, I would argue that those aren't actually very different. And this is why it excites me as much as it does. So, agriculture, I believe, is actually a huge, huge part of our culture because it is the way that we, as modern humans, and for since the end of the last ice age, now there are a few hunter-gatherer exceptions that are still around, but for the most part, agriculture is how we interact with the rest of the world, with the rest of nature and ecosystems. And it is fundamental to a culture. So all species meet their basic needs through interaction, through relationship with other species, with the rest of the ecosystem. Now, we get our food, we get ultimately much of our shelter, the clothing, our medicine, all of that comes from agriculture. And it reflects our values towards those other things, and of course towards ourselves as well, in how we make that relationship. Now, you might be going, hey, wait a second, Yeka, I don't have any relationship to agriculture. I don't think about it at all. I go to the grocery store, I pick my food, I go home, right? But I think that actually in itself is what I'm talking about. In today's culture, most of us don't think about our food, and yet we still eat. All of those things still happen on our behalf. We as a culture, and I don't think any individual made this choice, but as a society, we decided to take that responsibility and give it to these large corporations, to this industrial process. And the industrial process is that part of our culture that I personally believe is really harming us. I think it's really killing us. It is causing tremendous harm to our world, and we can trace a lot of our problems as a society, from our mental health issues to health, to the degradation of the biome that we depend on. All of this, I believe, we can trace back to this industrial agriculture, to this industrial, not just agriculture, but mentality, which sees communities, be those human communities or not human, other parts of the ecosystem, as commodities, as things to exploit. So we have taken that responsibility and said, okay, that's fine. You just produce it as quickly, as inexpensively as you can. Mine the soil for everything that it's worth until you destroy it, and then we'll just buy the product and we won't have to think about it. And there's a wonderful book called Dirt, the Erosion of Civilizations. I don't remember the author, but I'll put the link in the description below, which makes a very strong argument that all past civilizations failed ultimately because of their inability or their failure at resource management. They turned their soil into dirt. And you could look at other, you can say, oh, it was the degrading morals or the fighting between these people, but why did that fighting happen? What happened with that? And it was because of the loss of resources. And the really exciting thing is that that's not the only model. And permaculture creates a way for us to create other systems. It's a very hopeful system. So it's not like these false answers that I believe that are false, that are going around right now, that are the mega corporations taking advantage of our desire to do right by our planet by saying, oh, just here's the problem. We're going to scapegoat this one particular issue and just don't buy that product. Buy our other product instead. So you see this product and your heartstrings will get pulled about it, right? So don't eat that chicken, but eat this beyond whatever fake stuff that we're still going to make a bundle off of you for eating. But the problem is that all that stuff was still created using the same system that still is destroying our soil, that's destroying our ecosystems, that doesn't care about the human repercussions of it. So it's a false solution. It's not really a solution. But if we have a system that we are creating solutions with that is guided by the ethics that I just talked about, which is taking care of the planet, taking care of the people, and making sure that we're doing that into the future, that can continue to happen, then that's going to prevent those kinds of solutions from coming about. And then we use nature as a model because nature's figured it out, right? The ecosystems that exist today exist because of literally millions to billions of years of trial and error. And so if we can model that, then we've got a great starting point. Not to say that we can't expand or go beyond that. So anyways, permaculture is incredibly hopeful and empowering, and it can be used to really delve into these systems and understand them on a very deep level. I'm going to put some links into the description that talk a little bit more about this. One of them will be a video by the Permaculture Institute in Australia with Jeff Lawton, a talk that Starhawk gave about the intersection between permaculture and sort of pagan spirituality, and then also a nice little introduction by Matt Powers just on expanding a little bit more on what permaculture is. But for me, practicing permaculture and viewing it and using it as the lens that I try to understand the systems that I'm creating with it's very important for me as a pagan, because I believe that nature is sacred. I believe that the cycles of nature are sacred, and those are things that I want to live in I mean, it's so cliche to say, but I want to live in harmony with it, right? And this is a way for me to do that and for me to deepen my understanding. And if I don't act upon my beliefs, then what's the point of having them? That's my thought on that, right? So, yeah, I will put those links in the description. I'm also going to put a link to my personal channel, which is Abundance Homestead. That's where I'm putting the majority of my YouTube effort at this point. I'm still going to do some stuff on my pagan channel, but Abundance Homestead is the homestead that my family and I are working on right now. And I don't think that necessarily everybody needs to go out and do a homestead, and that everybody should be producing all of their own food and be totally self-sufficient. I don't think that's really going to work. But it's wonderful because permaculture is so scalable. You can use it as a design framework from anything from the balcony, or even if you don't have a balcony, in your tiny high-rise apartment, to thousands and thousands of acres. And it's something that yes, we start talking about it from looking at agriculture, because that's where our most basic needs begin. But it's a design system that can be used for any sort of system, be those human systems, businesses, of course, the agriculture. All of those things can be looked at through these lenses. So I'm going to put all kinds of links in the description below. I know that this portion was perhaps a little bit more preachy than I usually do, but I think I just got really excited about it. So thank you for bearing with me this far. And I'm going to take a sip of tea before jumping into the next part of the topic. I don't know how well they're going to show up, but there is a trio of magpies. I think they're juveniles that have just come to hang out while I've been filming. And that one that's sitting on top of the hummingbird feeder was really interesting. I think they were trying to get it off of the hook or something like that. But anyways, these beautiful creatures. So I hope you can see them. Okay, we have a neighbor running a chainsaw. So I tried to record this earlier and it was impossible to hear anything. So I'm going to try again. So this part of the topic is asking about what ecosystems we live in and our climate. So I was actually the one who wrote this topic, and I wrote the previous half of this week's topic as well. Sometimes as a group, we'll do some brainstorming sessions, and these were both topics that came out of those sessions. Now this one I think is large enough that both of these could be their own weeks on their own, but I understand why Kara put them together. So anyways, I very specifically wrote ecosystems because we don't just live in one ecosystem. I am an ecosystem. You are an ecosystem, right? Our bodies are a complex relationship between our cells and the cells of our microbiome. So in our gut, our skin, our eyes, we're still learning more and more about the system, our cells as an ecosystem. But we also live in larger ecosystems as well, these circles within circles. So here in my little garden space, this is an ecosystem that I am a part of. And the region that I'm in, and then my little watershed, and then my bioregion, and my hemisphere, my planet, our planet, and our solar system, on and on. One could argue that the solar system isn't an ecosystem, depending on whether you believe that there's other life or not. But anyways, and important, I also want to say that we aren't just in an ecosystem. We're part of those ecosystems, even though culturally we often tend to separate ourselves with the language that we use. For example, we talk about being on planet Earth. I don't believe that we're just on planet Earth. We are planet Earth. We are part of planet Earth. It's not humans and nature. We're all nature. We're all part of these ecosystems. So on a daily basis, I try to be mindful of the systems that I'm a part of. And sometimes that takes the form of a meditation or just a pause, just a grounding and an acknowledgement. And sometimes it might be a little bit more involved. For instance, here we garden and we grow some of our foods. So I will, when interacting with my soil, I might say a little thank you or something like that. Now, in terms of the bioregion that I'm part of, its name is the Colorado Plateau Shrublands. So, as one might guess from the name, part of it is, in fact, in Colorado. I am in northern New Mexico in a high desert. And so high as in 7,000 feet. And we are very dry, so we get about 12 inches of precipitation a year. And we do have the 4 traditional seasons, although I like to think of them as having 8 seasons, which check out the Wheel of the Year channel video on my pagan channel for more details on that. Sorry, I keep glancing at the magpies are still moving around up here. So one of the things about living in this environment and being part of this environment, it's very brittle, so our moisture is distributed very unevenly. We get these monsoon seasons, which are just starting up, and already they've been much heavier this year, probably because of the El Nino that we're having. But there's a for life to grow here, it has to be much more sheltered and much more protected than it might in a less brittle environment. So our mulch layers are really, really important, and the interaction between our animals and plants is just so critical. And the day and night cycle can be very pronounced, right? It can be very hot in the day and very cold at night. Even in the summers, we have these huge temperature swings. And I've lived other places and always come back because this is truly home for me. But there's a very different sort of awareness and intentionality that I think that I have, at least in living in a brittle and dry land environment, that was not necessarily the case when I lived in more humid and less brittle environments where things could be go, 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 go. But somewhere here, there's always this return to the rest, return to the protection, and then moving out, and then coming back in, and then moving back out. So I'm not really sure quite where I'm going with that, but that's kind of my relationship with my environment. And I think that I often kind of work in the cycles are very pronounced here. In terms of how somebody could connect with their own, I think a few weeks ago we did a topic on connecting with nature. I gave some techniques in that video, and I think those would be really very, very applicable to this one as well. So I will add that to the huge pile of links down below, and maybe give it a little, I don't know, is it going to be on this side or this side, a little card to click on as well. And the other thing, so in addition to those practices, sometimes for me, I'm a very, I really like learning things, and I like to understand things. So research on an area where you live, and just kind of starting to understand, who are your keystone species, where are your storms coming from, what's the weather pattern, all of that I think would really help to learning those things to ground someone in their region, their home, the ecosystem that you're part of. So it sounds like they're going to start up the machinery again, so I'm going to finish this up. Hopefully I didn't make this into a feature-length film, but I really appreciate you sticking with me this far, and I would very much love to hear any comments that you have on this week. We covered a lot of things, and I know that I was a little bit more loose in expressing some of my my strong beliefs this week. So I don't know. Let me know if you like that. And until next week, you guys take care.